My name is Madison, and my story begins when my mom married my dad, though he wasn't just my dad at the time. He was also Kayla's dad, having gone through a divorce when Kayla was only 2. Looking back, I have to admit our family situation was pretty unique. Unlike the stereotypical evil stepmother scenario you see in movies, my mom actually got along great with Kayla's mom. They'd chat on the phone, coordinate visits, and even have coffee together sometimes. Kayla would come over on weekends and holidays, and initially, everything was perfect. We were close in age, and despite being stepsisters, we clicked immediately. We'd spend hours playing together, sharing secrets, and doing all the things sisters do. I remember how we'd build blanket forts in the living room and stay up late watching movies, trying to stifle our giggles so our parents wouldn't hear us. But as we got older, things started to change. High school brought new friends, different interests, and slowly but surely, we began drifting apart. Kayla found her own crowd, and I noticed she was becoming, well, less tidy would be putting it mildly. "Kayla, could you please pick up your stuff from the bathroom?" I'd ask, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Yeah, I'll do it later," she'd reply, not even looking up from her phone. But later never seemed to come. Instead, my mom would eventually tell me to clean up after her. "Madison, honey, just take care of it," Mom would say. "She's our guest, after all." I'd grit my teeth and do it, but each time it happened, a tiny seed of resentment took root. Still, I kept my mouth shut. What else could I do? Even then, I was the responsible one, the one who understood the importance of maintaining peace in our blended family. After high school, I threw myself into college life. I worked hard, studied harder, and started saving every penny I could from my part-time jobs. My grandparents, Mom's parents, were always supportive, telling me how proud they were of my independence. After graduation, I landed a good job, the kind with benefits and regular hours. The pay was decent enough that I could start looking for my own place, though renting at first. Every month, I'd put aside a chunk of my salary, watching my savings grow slowly but surely. My parents were supportive too, in their own way. They'd stop by my rental apartment with home-cooked meals and random household items they thought I might need. But it was my grandparents who really helped make my dream of homeownership a reality. Between my savings, their generous contribution, and my parents' help with renovation costs and furniture, I finally bought my own place. That first night in my new apartment, I stood in the middle of my living room, breathing in the fresh paint smell and feeling like I'd finally made it. Everything was exactly where I wanted it, including the antique dining set my great-grandmother had left me and the expensive bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. 6 months after I moved in, Mom called. "Honey, I need to ask you a favor," she said over the phone. Her voice had that sweet, careful tone she uses when she wants something big. "It's about Kayla." I felt my stomach tighten. "What about her?" "She's found a job here in the city. Isn't that wonderful?" Mom paused for effect. "But she needs a place to stay while she gets settled. Just for a couple of months." I gripped my phone tighter. "Mom. She can't afford rent yet, and you have that spare room," Mom continued. "It would mean so much to all of us. You know how hard it is starting out." I closed my eyes, remembering all those times Kayla had left our house looking like a tornado hit it when we were younger. But maybe she'd grown up. Maybe she'd changed. It was only for 2 months, right? "Okay," I heard myself say. "But just for 2 months." "Oh, sweetie, thank you. You're such a good sister," Mom gushed. "Kayla will be there tomorrow." Kayla breezed in with 4 massive suitcases and immediately started unpacking, by which I mean she started throwing her clothes everywhere. Within an hour, my pristine living room looked like a clothing bomb had exploded. That night, I came home from work to find dirty dishes piled in the sink and half-eaten takeout containers scattered across the kitchen counter. Kayla was sprawled on my couch, watching TV. "Hey, could you wash your dishes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "I'll get to it," she said, not looking away from the screen. She never got to it. Days passed, and the situation only got worse. One morning, I opened my closet to find several of my favorite outfits missing. I found them later, in Kayla's room, crumpled on the floor. "What the hell, Kayla?" I confronted her. "Why are you taking my clothes without asking?" She rolled her eyes. "Come on, we're the same size. Don't be so uptight about it. We're sisters, remember?" "Sisters ask permission," I muttered, but she was already walking away. The final straw was the food situation. I'd always enjoyed cooking, making enough for leftovers to take to work the next day. But now, I'd come home to find everything I'd made the night before completely gone, with nothing prepared in return. "Kayla, you can't keep eating all the food without contributing," I said one evening, standing in front of my empty fridge. She looked up from her phone, annoyed. "I'm a guest here, Madison. You're the host, you're supposed to take care of your guests. Besides, this isn't even my kitchen. Guest or not, you need to help out," I insisted. "Whatever," she shrugged. "If you're going to be so weird about it, I'll just order takeout." I stood there, watching her scroll through her delivery apps, feeling my blood pressure rise. This wasn't what I'd signed up for. But every time I thought about confronting her more seriously, I heard my mom's voice in my head, "You're such a good sister." 2 weeks into this nightmare of cohabitation, I was already counting down the days until my apartment would be mine again. Work had been particularly rough that day, and all I wanted was to come home, heat up some leftovers, if there were any, and collapse on my couch. Instead, I walked into darkness. At first, I thought maybe Kayla had finally gone out for the evening, giving me some peace and quiet. But then I noticed the flickering light coming from my living room. As I turned the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, at my dining table, using my great-grandmother's antique dining set that I barely used myself because of how precious it was to me, sat Kayla and some guy I'd never seen before. Candles were lit everywhere, creating what was supposed to be a romantic atmosphere. They were leaning in close to each other, giggling and kissing between bites of what looked like takeout arranged on my family heirlooms. But what really made my blood boil was the open bottle on the table, my bottle. The expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, now half empty between these two strangers. I slapped the light switch on. "What the hell is this?" Kayla jumped, then rolled her eyes when she saw it was me. "Oh my God, Madison, you scared us." "Who is this?" I demanded, pointing at the guy who was now giving me an annoyed look. "And why are you using my great-grandmother's china? And that wine was expensive and saved for a special occasion." "This is Derek," Kayla said casually, as if this was all perfectly normal. "And this is a special occasion, it's our third date. I don't care if it's your wedding dinner. You have no right to bring strangers into my home without asking, and you definitely have no right to use my things without permission." Derek cleared his throat. "Hey, we're trying to have a romantic evening here. Could you give us some privacy? Maybe go grab coffee somewhere or stay at a friend's place tonight?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me?" "Yeah," Kayla chimed in, wrapping an arm around Derek's shoulders. "We'd appreciate some alone time. It's not cool to crash someone's date like this." "Crash someone's date? This is my apartment. Come on, sis," Kayla whined. "Don't be such a buzzkill. We just want to spend some quality time together." "Quality time? Get out." I pointed at Derek. "You need to leave right now." "Or what?" Derek smirked. "Or I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing." "You wouldn't dare," Kayla gasped. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. "Try me." Derek's smirk vanished. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. "Whatever. This is ridiculous, I'm out of here." "Derek, wait," Kayla called after him as he headed for the door. She turned to glare at me. "Thanks a lot, Madison. Thanks for ruining everything." She grabbed her purse and stormed out after him, slamming the door so hard my pictures rattled on the walls. My phone rang early the next morning. Mom's name flashed across the screen, and I already knew this wasn't going to be good. How could you? She started before I could even say hello. Your own sister. Mom, let me explain. Explain what? How you humiliated that poor girl in front of her date. How you threatened to call the police on her. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Did she tell you she was using great-grandma's china? Or that she opened my expensive wine without asking? Oh, Madison, Mom's voice dripped with disappointment. When did you become so selfish? So arrogant? Your sister is trying to build a life here, and you're treating her like a criminal. She brought a complete stranger into my home without. She's an unhappy girl who needs her family's support right now. But clearly, you're too wrapped up in your own little world to see that. Before I could defend myself further, Mom hung up. I stared at my phone, feeling a mixture of anger and hurt bubbling up inside me. But I didn't have long to process, because barely an hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was Kayla's mom. Madison, her voice was sharp. We need to talk about your behavior. My behavior? I couldn't help but laugh. What about Kayla's behavior? You know, ever since you bought that apartment, you've changed. Become arrogant, selfish. That's not fair. Not fair? I'll tell you what's not fair. Have you forgotten when you and your mother first moved here? You stayed at our house for 2 weeks. Kayla and I treated you both with nothing but respect. We didn't kick you out or threaten to call the police on you. That was completely different, I protested. We didn't trash your house or use your personal belongings without permission. Look, I come home exhausted from work every day, and instead of resting, I'm cleaning up after Kayla. She doesn't wash dishes, doesn't do laundry. You're being too strict with her, Kayla's mom cut me off. She tells me how hard it is living with you, how biased you are against her. These are little things, Madison. You need to stop being so uptight about every little thing. Little things? It's about basic respect. She doesn't appreciate anything I do, doesn't respect my home or my belongings. She's your sister. Well, if she doesn't like living with me, she's welcome to leave my apartment right now. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. I see, Kayla's mom's voice turned ice cold. I'll be speaking to your father and mother about this. Don't think this is over. The line went dead. I sat there, my hands shaking with frustration. How had I become the villain in this story? All I wanted was some basic respect and consideration in my own home. Was that really too much to ask? My phone rang again a few hours later. Mom's name flashed on the screen for the second time that day. I almost didn't answer, but I knew ignoring her would only make things worse. My finger hovered over the decline button for a moment before I finally accepted the call, bracing myself for what was coming. What is wrong with you? She didn't even say hello. I just got off the phone with Kayla's mother. She's incredibly upset. I slumped onto my couch, feeling a headache starting to form. Mom, do you have any idea how hard I've worked to maintain this relationship with her? Your father's ex-wife and I have always gotten along wonderfully. I'm proud of that. And now you're ruining everything. Do you know how rare it is for divorced families to get along like we do? I'm ruining everything? I sat up straight, my voice rising. Mom, you promised me Kayla wouldn't interfere with my life. You said I'd barely see her, because she'd be at work all day. Well, guess what? It's been 2 weeks, and she hasn't gone to a single job interview. Not one. She's looking. No, she's not. She stays home all day, making a mess of my apartment, and bringing random guys over. You want to know what she's really doing? She sits on my couch all day watching TV shows and ordering takeout. She doesn't wash her clothes, doesn't cook, doesn't clean, won't even wash a single dish. Every day I come home from work to complete chaos. Do you know what it's like to work a full day and come home to find your kitchen destroyed and all your food eaten? Honey, Mom's voice took on that condescending tone I hated, the one she used when she thought she was being the voice of reason. Kayla isn't used to living independently. She doesn't know how to do these things yet. She's never had to take care of herself before. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I paced around my living room, stepping over Kayla's discarded shoes. She's an adult, Mom. She should know how to wash a dish. These aren't complicated skills we're talking about. This is basic human courtesy. You're the hostess, Madison. It's your responsibility to be hospitable and take care of your guests. This attitude of yours. I didn't raise you to be like this. I raised you to be generous and kind, especially to family. I felt the frustration building in my chest as my mother continued lecturing me about hospitality and family duty. Every word just reminded me of the constant disrespect I'd been enduring in my own home. The wine stains on my carpet caught my eye, remnants from Kayla's romantic dinner, and something inside me finally snapped. You know what, Mom? I interrupted her mid-sentence, my voice rising with every word. I'm done trying to explain this to you. I'm done being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who has to accommodate everything. I'm just completely tired of. I took a deep breath, my next words coming out in a burst of anger. I'm tired of Kayla behaving like a pig in my house. The moment those words left my mouth, I heard a small gasp behind me. My stomach dropped as I slowly turned around. There was Kayla, standing in the doorway, her face pale and her eyes wide. She must have come back to get something and heard everything. The look on her face made my anger evaporate instantly, replaced by a sickening wave of guilt. Kayla, I started, but she was already turning away. Madison, what's happening? My mom's voice was still coming through the phone, but I barely heard her. I watched, frozen in place, as Kayla walked straight to her room. I could hear her opening drawers and moving around. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, she emerged with her suitcases, the same ones she'd arrived with just 2 weeks ago. She didn't look at me as she walked past, didn't say a word. The only sound was the rolling of her suitcase wheels across my hardwood floors and then the soft click of the front door closing behind her. I stood there in the sudden silence, my phone still in my hand, my mother's voice a distant murmur. I hung up without saying goodbye. The following days were eerily quiet. No calls from my mother, no angry messages from Kayla's mom, nothing. The silence was worse than the arguing had been. I knew Kayla must have told her mother what happened, and her mother must have told mine, but no one was saying anything to me. The weight of that silence pressed down on me every day as I moved through my now spotless apartment. A week passed like this, until there was a knock at my door one evening. I opened it to find both my parents standing there. Mom's face was set in that expression I remembered from childhood, the one that meant I was in serious trouble. Dad looked tired. They came in, and Mom didn't waste any time. Do you have any idea what you've done? She started, pacing my living room. Calling your sister a pig? Making her feel so unwelcome that she had to leave in the middle of the night? I didn't raise you to be cruel, Madison. She continued listing my sins, each one delivered like a prosecutor at trial. I noticed Dad hadn't said anything yet, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking around my apartment. Mom noticed too. She turned to him suddenly. Why are you just standing there silent? Say something to your daughter. Tell her how disappointed you are. Dad cleared his throat, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Actually, he said slowly, I think both of our daughters are wrong in this situation. What? Mom and I said simultaneously. Madison, he turned to me, his voice gentle but firm, calling your sister a pig was wrong. It was hurtful, and it's the reason she left. You need to apologize for that. I nodded, feeling the shame fresh again. But, he continued, holding up a hand as Mom started to speak, I otherwise support Madison in this. Kayla needs to learn to behave like an adult, like an independent person. Maybe it will be the push she needs to start taking responsibility for her own life. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for our children is to let them face the consequences of their actions. My mother's face turned red. Oh, so now you want to parent? Where were you when I was helping Kayla find a job? When I was coordinating with her mother? Why do I have to take care of your eldest daughter more than you do? That's not fair, Dad started, but Mom cut him off. You know what's not fair? You sitting back silent all these years while I worked to keep this family together. Well, congratulations, now you can deal with your daughters yourself. Then she turned back to me, her anger finding a new target. And you? You think you can just throw your sister out whenever you feel like it? This is my property, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I can do what I want with it. Mom laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your property? You think you did this all by yourself? Almost everything in this apartment was bought with our money. She gestured wildly around the room before pointing dramatically at the bookcase against the wall. That bookcase belonged to my grandmother. It's a family heirloom, which means it's my furniture, not yours. I stood there for a moment, looking at the bookcase my mother was pointing at. Then, without a word, I walked over to it and started taking the books off the shelves. What are you doing? Mom demanded. Packing up your furniture, I replied, my hands shaking slightly as I continued emptying the shelves. I went to my storage closet and pulled out some moving boxes I'd kept from when I first moved in. Madison, stop this, Dad said quietly, but I ignored him. Don't worry, Mom, I said, starting to break down the bookcase. A courier will deliver this to your house tomorrow. Since it's your furniture, you should have it. Mom grabbed her purse. I can't deal with this right now. This isn't the daughter I raised. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Dad stood there awkwardly for a moment. Madison. You should go after her, Dad. He nodded sadly, then followed Mom out. I heard him call for a taxi in the hallway. True to my word, I had the bookcase delivered to my mother's house the next day. After that, silence fell over our family again. No calls, no texts, no family dinners. Just silence. A month passed like this. I threw myself into work, trying not to think about how everything had fallen apart. Then one afternoon, my phone lit up with my dad's number. Can we meet for coffee? He asked. That little cafe near your office? Sure, I agreed, grateful that at least someone in my family was still talking to me. But when I walked into the cafe the next day, I stopped short. There at the table with my father sat Kayla, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. For a moment, I considered turning around and walking out, but Dad had already seen me and waved me over. I took a deep breath and approached the table. No one spoke as I sat down. Kayla stared into her coffee cup, and I focused on arranging my purse on the back of my chair. Dad cleared his throat but didn't say anything. The awkward silence stretched on until a waitress came to take my order, giving us all a moment to collect ourselves. Finally, Kayla looked up. So, she started, then paused to take a breath. I got a job. That's great, I managed. Yeah, it is. And I found my own apartment. It's small, but it's nice. I can actually afford it now with my new salary. She smiled slightly. And, I'm still dating Derek. He thinks it's hilarious now. Keeps calling you the fighting girl. Says he's never seen anyone go from zero to calling the cops so fast. Despite everything, I found myself chuckling. Well, he was being pretty obnoxious. He was, Kayla admitted. We both were. She set down her coffee cup and looked me directly in the eyes. Madison, I'm really sorry. For everything. The mess, the disrespect, using your things without asking. I was acting like a spoiled teenager instead of an adult. I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have called you a pig. That was cruel, and I regret it. I was just so frustrated. I know. I gave you plenty of reasons to be frustrated. Kayla reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Living on my own now, having to actually take care of everything myself, I get it. I get why you were so angry about the dishes, and the cleaning, and everything else. Since that day at the cafe, Kayla and I have been rebuilding our relationship. We meet for coffee regularly now, and she's actually become quite good at keeping her new apartment clean. She even invited me over for dinner recently, cooked it herself and everything. Things with Mom, though, that's a different story. Dad tells me she's not ready to reconcile yet. She needs time to think, he says, but I know it's more complicated than that. Mom has always prided herself on maintaining the perfect blended family, and I think my conflict with Kayla shattered that illusion for her. I stand by my actions, though. Yes, I could have handled some things better, but I don't believe I owe an apology to Mom or Kayla's mother for expecting basic respect in my own home. Yesterday, something interesting happened. A courier delivered a familiar bookcase to my apartment, the same one I'd sent to Mom months ago, in a fit of anger. There was no note, no explanation, just the bookcase. As I stood there looking at it, I couldn't help but wonder if this was Mom's way of extending an olive branch. I haven't called her about it yet. Some wounds need more time to heal, and some conversations need the right moment. For now, I put the bookcase back in its old spot, and every time I look at it, I think about how families are like books. Sometimes they need to be taken apart and put back together before they can stand properly again.